In this video, the first project valuation technique that we'll talk about is break-even analysis, which is the number of units that we need to sell so that we cover all of our costs related to making those units. So here's a chart breaking down break-even analysis. And you can see the revenue line plotting the revenue on the y-axis that we get for the specific number of units that we sell, which is plotted on the x-axis. And at first it might seem weird that you would just add up all the variable costs and it would be a very easy calculation. But a key part of this is that we also have to cover the fixed costs related to the project, which is a horizontal line here because it doesn't change over some range of sales, which on this chart goes from 0 to 8,000 units made and sold. So that fixed cost at 100 on this chart needs to be added to the variable cost line, and those together become your total costs, which starts at 100 now, not at the origin at 0. The break-even point is where the revenue and total cost lines intersect since they have different slopes. And that point is at 4,000 units on this chart. And it's at the point where revenue is exactly the same as total cost, which on this chart is at 175. So at that 4,000 unit point, you've sold enough that your revenue covers both the related variable costs to what you've sold, but also the related fixed costs. And below that, you're losing money. Above that, you're making a profit. And right at the break-even point, you're not making profit or losing profit, you're just breaking even, which is why it's called that. And there are two formulas that we can take a look at for break-even analysis, and those are break-even units and break-even sales dollars. So the first one that we'll talk about is break-even units, and you can see how it's just taking the elements of the profit equation and solving for Q in the formula, which is the same as units. And we're going to hold profit in the equation at 0 because that's the break-even point. And S in the formula is sales price, which is what we're showing as P, or price in the profit equation. And you can see that we're taking the fixed costs in the formula for break-even units, which is this big cost that we need to cover. And we're dividing it by sales price minus variable costs. And what's another name for S minus VC? As you know from looking at income statements, that's really just your gross profit. So we're dividing this big fixed cost number by the little bit of profit that we get from the sale of each unit, because S minus VC means we've covered the variable costs already. And now with what's left over, we'll see how many total units in aggregate and take that little bit of gross profit that's left over from the sale of each unit to combine and cover that great big fixed cost number. And the second formula follows the same logic, but it's solving for the total sales revenue, or just R in the profit equation. On the plus side, break-even analysis is a quick and easy way to get a back of the envelope sense of how many products or items we have to sell before we actually make a profit. And it's also easily understood by everybody at the company, even senior management, right? It's a pretty intuitive kind of analysis. The disadvantage, though, is that it doesn't take into account some other factors that could actually be pretty important. Things like timing. Do we break even this year, or do we break even 20 years from now? That could make a difference in our analysis. It also doesn't take into account the time value of money, which is that $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. And that's due to inflation, but also what you could have done with that money to build value. Instead of putting it into this project, you could have invested in a different project. So the solution is to augment your analysis with another technique, such as net present value, which we'll talk about in another video. But before that, if you'd like, we've got a PDF with a break-even exercise that you can walk through to get some practice with this technique. So you can look for a separate link to that document and possibly a video debrief of the exercise as well. Okay, thanks a lot.